station, 1370 WOCA.
Ocala.
All right, 5 minutes after 11 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in this Wednesday morning. We've been, it's been a nonstop morning, huh?
Oh, yeah.
Let's talk about something that's more like mind over matter. This is an interesting topic. We've spoken to a few people in the past, the power of positive thinking. We actually had different authors who had kind of different thoughts on that, whether it's for your health, your wealth, just the ability to maybe kind of will yourself to be better or better off. Napoleon Hill has the book Think and Grow Rich, and that's come up a few times on our show. And we've had people calling in and say, you know what, I thought I was going to, I had my mind set up, my mind made up, I was going to drive to California. This was my plan. And in my mind, I was positive it was going to work out. And the car broke down in Dallas. Never did make it there. So how come my positive thinking didn't work out? And I was like, oh, geez, I don't know. I mean, maybe you need a new car. I mean, maybe something as simple as that.
Yeah.
Oh, or maybe there's something more to it. Our next guest has an interesting look at the Think and Grow Rich philosophy, I guess you could say, or theory. He's got a book called Stickability: The Power of Perseverance. So using my little metaphor of the guy who gets broken down in Dallas and comes back to Florida and never goes to L.A., well, what if he had stuck to it? What if he said, you know what, I'm going to get another car and go? He would have made it, wouldn't have been complaining anymore.
Right.
Greg S. Reid is our guest. He's an award-winning filmmaker for such acclaimed films as Pass It On and 3 Feet from Gold. He's a publisher, a motivational speaker, and a best-selling author. The book is called Stickability. It's the Think and Grow Rich Stickability: The Power of Perseverance. I don't know if I'm saying the title exactly right, but let's find out from our guest, Greg S. Reid. Good morning, Greg.
Sounds like you guys are talking about trains, planes, and automobiles for that person.
Yeah, right. Right. Well, you know, it's kind of like a metaphor in a way of positive thinking. Because people will say that all the time. Well, wait a minute, I didn't expect to come down with a cold when I was supposed to put on a concert, or I didn't expect to break my leg when I was supposed to go skiing and all that stuff. So I don't know how to answer them. So.
And quite frankly, neither do I. You know, nowhere in positive motivation or personal development does it say that you eliminate, the realities of life. I mean, there's an old Dancing Bear song that says you got to accentuate the positive and eliminate the negative. And my mentor taught me you have to accentuate the positive and illuminate the negative, because when the negative comes, you got to put a spotlight on it so you can deal with it, so you can realize you got a flat tire in Wisconsin.
There you go.
Change that tire and move on to California.
There you go. Yeah, I've always. Some people say you shouldn't worry, and I say, worry is the mother of prevention. Right?
Yeah.
You worry about running out of gas. Well, then put some gas in.
Mm-hmm. There you go. Well, fear. There's a saying that says, "Fear's only enemy is action." So just by taking action, you eliminate the fear of running out of gas, obviously.
There you go.
And by the way, when we're talking about positive mental attitude and all that stuff, the realities are there's this thing called law of attraction. It's what you're talking about. What you think about naturally comes to be. And I think it's more something called reticular activator. What you focus on all of a sudden appears. So if you look at red Hondas, all of a sudden you'll see red Hondas everywhere. They're always there, but until you focus on it, you won't see it.
I think so, too. We were having this discussion about steel beams the other day. We said, like 150 years ago, there probably wasn't one steel beam on the planet. Mm-hmm. And now every skyline is hundreds of thousands of steel beams.
Yeah.
Well, somebody must have visioned it, and now they're the skeleton for almost all buildings, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's kind of funny you say that. That's Andrew Carnegie. And Carnegie is the person who commissioned Napoleon Hill to go on the mission to meet all the powerful and influential people of the early 1900s and write the Bible of Personal Development, Think and Grow Rich. 100 years later, I've been kind of tapped to carry on that tradition and talk to today's modern iconic figures to find out why they didn't quit before the miracle happened.
Oh, okay. So now what is are there, let me ask it this way. Are there any techniques, any tricks? You hear people say, I have a note in my wallet. Every time I look in my wallet, I see my positive statement, or I have it on my mirror, or it's on the dashboard of my car. Are those things usable? Does that really help?
I think it works for each person individually. I mean, come on, let's be honest. I mean, if it works for them, then it works. I don't think there is one silver bullet for anything, but I do know this. It's the action behind the attraction that makes your dream come true. Yes, you got to think it. Yes, you got to feel it, but ultimately you got to get off your backside and you got to do it. I mean, that's the way life works.
That is right.
So the whole thing about stickability is about having a vision of what you want and having the courage and the fortitude to move toward it, and don't let yourself or other people talk you out of your dream.
You know, here's a really good example. The simple act of having a book that's published. You have a book, you're talking about it. At one point, you thought about it. And if you had only thought about it, we wouldn't be talking today.
Yes. In fact, one of the people I interviewed yesterday at my event for the release of Stickability is a guy named Ron Klein, who invented the credit card magnetic strip and changed all of banking as we know it. And I says, you know, what's the difference if someone is in the shower and they have a great idea, they walk out and dry off and forget it. Other people dry off and change the planet. And that's what stickability is. I sat down with Steve Wozniak, who started Apple Computers, to, you know, Marty Cooper, who invented the cellular phone. These people changed the face of everything we know. And it was very interesting to find out what stickability meant to them.
How did you get them to speak with you? Because a lot of people inundate with a lot of people inundate the famous people of the world, and they just want to come and meet them and use any reason. How did you get to be so unique that they allowed you to come into their realm?
I expected them to meet. I guess I never even thought why wouldn't they? I mean, the whole thing is the most successful people are also the most available people. And it sounds so strange, but it's true. You see, the most successful people have got their time freed up because they surrounded themselves with people that run their businesses, that they've got the availability to actually have interviews and hang out. If you're brand new at something, you're happy-go-lucky, you're cool, you're fresh, you're excited. If you're at the topic of your field, you're happy-go-lucky, you got nothing to prove. It's the people in the middle that are a pain in the neck because they're filled with ego, they're edging God out.
Right.
So I realized I just go to the front of the line, and these people are not only accessible, but they're so open to tell me not only their story, but their true heart of where everything was at when they began.
The person who has no money wants to hear everything you have to say about thinking and growing rich. What does Prince William think? I mean, he doesn't need to think and grow rich. I mean, it's handed to him from the day one, right? Mm-hmm. Or anybody in that circumstance. I just picked on him because we all know him, I guess. But
yeah,
but I mean, what can he think and grow? I mean, if he can't think and grow rich, can he think and grow wise? Can he think and grow? Do you know what I'm getting at? I mean, and I'm not necessarily asking you to talk about him, but do you have clients who already are financially rich and they need to think and grow something else?
Yeah, what they do is that's why the giving back really begins. That's why you see so much philanthropy between Oprahs and the Bill Gates and the Warren Buffetts and whatnot, because they're thinking and growing and improving the world. One of the people I interviewed was a guy named Peter Diamandis, who started the X Prize. And he says, you know, the whole idea where everyone else is focusing on making this planet as good as it can be, I'm trying to get off it so we can make the perfect world somewhere else. They think so big, so differently, that's why they create such magic.
And will he be one of the pioneers in literally space travel? Because that's what we hear is happening to NASA, at least here in Florida. They want to lease out all of their space areas to private corporations so they can send up space flights.
Peter is the founder of that, yes. He's the guy who started the X Prize. He put up the first $10 million for someone to go to space, a civilian, and return back to Earth. And whoever could do it 2 times in a row got this $10 million, and that's what changed all of civilian space exploration. But can I tell a quick story about not having money and having a different outlook?
Yes.
Steve Wozniak, you know, we only know him as the Woz and the rich guy from Apple, but here's the scoop. I asked him, I says, what made you and Steve Jobs so successful? And he says, we embraced the lack. I said, what do you mean? He goes, we had no money. He goes, when microchips came out, I could afford 1 microprocessor. He goes, where Hewlett-Packard would go from point A to point B with 20 of them, I'd pull away 5 and get it to work. I'd pull away 5 and get it to work. Till finally I could go from point A to point B with my 1 chip. Not because I was being cool, I could afford 1 chip. But by embracing that lack, I found the path of least resistance, the cleanest solution, and that changed the face of personal computing. He goes, if I had all the money in the world, Apple never would have been created the way it was.
Oh, interesting. So could we? I guess what I'm trying to get at here, in my line of thinking here, if you have no money and you're using this technique to become wealthier, and actually we'll talk about money, that's kind of easy to understand. Could we think and grow peace?
Good question.
The Dalai Lama thinks so, and Gandhi thought so.
So why don't we? Is there something we're missing here? Because I would rather, if I had a choice to say what could I do with the world, and okay, well I don't know that I have enough anything to go to another planet, but could I do anything at all that would literally clean up the anger of the world? It's not just peace in the Middle East, but it's peace in my neighborhood. What about the guy who's beating his wife? I mean, can I do something to affect him, or does my thinking only affect me?
No, the bottom line is the answer. You already know the answer, but you're just not doing it, because you and I both know that if you wanted to make a difference to that one person down the street, you could. But for some reason, most people just don't do it. We talk about it, we think about it, unfortunately, but we're missing that actionable step. So many people think about, gosh, I should go down and feed homeless people, but they don't really do it. Other people pack their back of their car every day and make sure they stop by and feed everybody. So it's that action behind the attraction that makes our dreams come true. But a scientific fact, here's a scientific fact. If 2% of the world's population believes something to be true as a collective soul, that's where a shift happens. That's why you see global change going on right now with the atmosphere and things of that nature, because the conversations have changed to green energy. The reality is, until you have a consensus of at least 2% of the world's population, nothing can be justed.
So we have to convince 2% of the world that it's stupid to hurt somebody else, or it's not cool or something. We have to figure that out. I know it's kind of a profound sense of thinking, but let's bring it back to what probably most people will buy the book for: stickability. I love the term stickability, because I think, again, going back to simply writing a book, Robin and I speak to authors every single day. Every once in a while, we'll meet somebody and say, "Oh, you're the two that do that radio show. I'm writing a book." "Oh, really? What's it about?" "Oh," and they'll tell us what it's about. "Yeah, I started it about 30 years ago." 30 years ago?
Yeah, right.
30 years ago? What the heck? Where's your stickability there? I mean, you could have had 30 books in 30 years, but I guess that's what it is. If it's saving money for a down payment on a car or doing anything. What about the thinking process, though? How do we... my notes here say you have some causes of failure you want to tell us about, so I guess we should go there. What kind of roadblocks do we put up for ourselves that cause us not to succeed?
Well, it's basically you wrap like 3 or 4 questions into one.
Sorry.
So I'm good. It's okay. But I'm going to go ahead and talk about what kind of thinking makes people successful, and this is it. Successful people have commitment where other people have interest. If I open a brand new restaurant because it's a hot trend, as soon as there's a challenge because I'm just interested in it, I might fold the shop. If I take over the family Italian restaurant that's been 8 generations, when I have challenge, I'm committed because I got to pass it to my kid. I'll find a solution through. The difference between most people who succeed and those who do not is that commitment level.
Okay, so that's just you. I mean, you just have to decide, I'm committed or I'm not. Mm-hmm. That happens in marriages too. I mean, you have marriages who, you make that big vow in the beginning, but you don't really stick to it. I mean, the stickability part applies again.
Correct. And then you say, what is the one mental thing? Well, that's what the biggest common denominator. All these people stayed with their dream, and they didn't let other people, or the big one, they didn't let themselves talk them out of their dream. And that's what I thought was amazing. When I talked to, Gene Landrum, he wanted to bring a rat into the restaurant industry. And I said, "Are you crazy?" And everyone he went to said, "I'm not going to invest in that. We've been keeping rats out of the restaurant business. You want to bring them in as a mascot?" And finally, one person, the founder of Atari, wrote him $1 million check to open the first one. That went on to become Chuck E. Cheese. Well, one person sees one thing, another person sees reality.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
Can I go back to a statement that I thought you said toward the beginning of the conversation and see if I heard you correctly? You were talking about people in the middle, and did you say edging God out?
That's defining, when most people are filled with ego, which is a acronym for edging God out, a lot of people will say.
Oh, okay.
And they find their own voice. They're going through their own trials and tribulations. So, for example, if I wanted to be a top real estate agent, If they put me in a real estate room, I'd say, who's driving the Ferrari? Who's the top person? That's what I want to learn from. And they're also going to be the most teachable because they've already paved the way. I'm not going to go to someone who's struggling in the middle and they can't even pay their own mortgage because they're just finding their own voice. So when I want to be a best-selling author, I went to Barnes & Noble and bought every #1 bestseller. I called them up and asked them to teach me, and they did. And here it is, 46 books and 35 languages later. When I want to be a public speaker, I went to Zig Ziglar, Brian Tracy, Dennis Waitley. I went to the top, and I asked them to teach me. They did. Same thing in business, same thing in filmmaking. I just go right to the top. And by doing that, you'll realize that you can get the same results they did.
Yeah, the success leaves clues, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And most people are just afraid to make a phone call. That's what's so funny. It's the same thing. You know, we talk about the starving people. All I do different is I pick up the phone. I go take the action. That's it.
Yeah, that is interesting. We had a woman on earlier this morning, and she had some kind of cancer that's lifelong. It's incurable, but I guess it's in remission. Anyway, somebody said, if there's one thing you wanted to do before you died, what would you do? She said, I've always wanted to have lunch with Larry David, the actor, the entertainer, the writer. So they said, well, why don't you write him a letter? And she said, oh, come on, he's never going to answer a letter. Well, long story short, she wrote the letter, had lunch with him.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's what I'm saying. The most successful people truly are the most available. And it just seems strange, and people don't believe it to be true, but people are people. That's all there is to it.
Yeah.
Even the rocket scientists that I meet are not rocket scientists. They're just dudes. And people go through their trials and tribulations until they have a dream. Look, first there's a dream, then there's a challenge, and then comes a victory. Most people quit in the challenge. So stickability is just focusing on the people that persevered. They had that stickability, and they did not confuse that with stubbornness.
Right.
They had stickability and the adaptability, flexibility to make their dream come true.
One of the things that is in my notes for this book, and we do not have the book, so I apologize for not having actually read it, but the notes tell me that the importance of insight through necessity is mentioned, and I wanted to just say something about that real quickly because I think I get this. I think I get this in this way. If I have something I need to do, but it looks too big for me to do, and I just don't do it, then I'm never going to get that little moment. But if I say, okay, I'm going to start, I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I'm going to start, then all of a sudden I reach that point where I say, well, how do you do this? This looks too confusing, and boom, I had this insightful moment. Or maybe it's one of those where I can't figure it out. I go to bed, wake up the next morning, take a shower, and then when I'm in the shower, it's like, oh, wait a minute, I think I know how to do this. And then you go try it, and just using the trip across America that I used as a metaphor in the opening, I mean, you know what the route is, but you don't know what you're going to come across. You don't know if you're going to have rain, a flat tire, a guy standing in the road, and every time you have a challenge, it is that very thing you're talking about here, that insight through necessity, because all of a sudden you need to know something.
Yeah.
And there it is.
There you go. One of the great interviews I did with the founder of Chick-fil-A restaurants, he said, if I want to get to the end of the street, that's my goal. I cannot overplan it. A planner is going to plan every step where they're going to pause and take a break. I'll look for opportunity. Did a kid leave a skateboard or a bicycle out and make my journey shorter? If I get lucky, I'll wave down a neighbor and I'll hitch a ride to the end of the street. He goes, either way, I will get to my goal. I'm just not so caught up in exactly how it has to happen.
But you also have God in the equation, right? To be successful or not?
Well, I believe in my personal life, yes, and a lot of the people I interviewed, the answer is yes. And everyone has their different definition of what God means to them or spirit. But the reality is that they all believe in some form of higher power, bringing them on to that, giving them that epiphany. Some people call it tapping the source, like infinite knowledge and wisdom. And however you want to determine it, the realities are, there is a greater power. It's like, where does that idea come from?
It's bigger than you.
In the shower or in the middle of the night. Yeah. Correct. And so what happens is that so many people give that credit to whatever deity or entity that serves them best. But for myself, I choose to call God.
Yeah, and I think I know what you mean by edging God out as an acronym for ego. If you look at him, I'm just using music as an example. I love the Pointer Sisters, and I know that dates me to say that, but when one of the Pointer Sisters decided that she was going to go out on her own because she was better than the group, that's the end of the group.
Yeah, and the end of her.
The ego, and I can't remember which one it was, but and I just picked on that one. There's so many of them that do that.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think you're absolutely right. Except for Donald Trump, apparently he can be the big ego guy, and he still lives on and is very successful. Maybe there's a difference or an exception to everything, huh?
Well, it's what you began with. I mean, he began with $200 million. I mean, I'm not a rocket scientist, but let me ask you, if I gave you $200 million, Larry, to start your business career, do you think you might have a shot?
Your book is called, do I use stickability as the primary title here?
Yeah, it's Think and Grow Rich, Stickability, and the subtitle is The Power of Perseverance. And I got to say, thank you very much for having me on today. You guys rock.
Well, thank you. Let me make sure the listeners know how to get the book. Do you have a website?
Well, of course, it's bookgreg.com. But the most important thing, go into any bookstore, pick it up, go to Amazon, go to Barnes & Noble, and support your local retailers. The main thing is to get that message out, especially for the holidays. I think this is a great product to give out for the holiday season, so you can start the beginning of the year instead of just setting goals and New Year's resolution. How do you stick to it? And this book will give you the solution how.
Well, through all of your history and everything, sir, how do you keep from overextending yourself? Because you have so many things to your credit that sometimes people will get overwhelmed.
I surround myself with people that have expertise outside my own. I don't do all the work. So, for example, I'll give you guys a little hint here. It's kind of like there's no Santa Claus, but there's a big difference between being an author and being a writer. It's the same thing. Katy Perry might sing a song on the radio. Doesn't mean she wrote that song. It means that she's the author of it. So a lot of the stuff I write or I author, my name goes on the book, but I've got gifted ghostwriters and copy editors that help me craft my message to the way it needs to come out. So I don't have to do all the work myself. Same thing when I'm making movies, same thing when I'm running business. I surround myself with people that have expertise outside my own.
Greg, thank you for being on the air with us today. Again, the book is Think and Grow Rich, Stickability, The Power of Perseverance. Greg S. Reid. R-E-I-D is how Greg spells his last name. Great interview. Thank you so much, Greg.
Larry, Robin, you guys are the best. Thank you.
All right, we'll take a break and be right back.
You're listening to WOCA News Talk 1370, Ocala's source for what's happening in today's hottest, up-to-date news and topics.
In honor of our World War II veterans, the world's only full dual-control P-51C Mustang fighter, B-17 Flying Fortress, and the B-24 Liberator heavy bombers are coming to Ocala International Airport November 8th to the 10th for an amazing World War II living history event. Explore these beautifully restored World War II aircraft inside and out, and even become a part of the crew in an unforgettable flight experience. Or get some stick time in the legendary